Foreign sources. Indigenous sources can be supplemented by foreign sources. The writings of foreign travelers and chroniclers provide valuable sources of ancient Indian history. Of these, some visited India and some others who never visited India, like Herodotus, Cassius, Pliny, Justin, Shihab al-Dinumari, etc., based on their accounts on information received from different sources. To India came Greek, Chinese, Tibetan, Arabian visitors, merchants, ambassadors, historians, pilgrims, travelers, etc., and some of them left behind accounts of the things that they saw. These accounts help in writing of Indian history, especially to resolve the problem of chronology. These have been found immense useful in building up the framework of Indian chronology. Foreign sources can be divided into four categories: Greek, Roman, Chinese, Tibetan, and Arab. Greek writers. It is remarkable that Alexander's invasions find no mention in Indian sources, and it is totally on the basis of the Greek sources that we have to reconstruct the history of his Indian invasions. The names of Greek writers of pre-Alexandrian time are Skylax, Hecatæus Miletus, Herodotus, and Cassius. Skylax, 6th century BC, was the first Greek writer who wrote about India. He was the Greek soldier of King Darius I, 550 BC to 486 BC of Persia, Iran. He was sent by the king to discover the course of Indus River. He wrote his travel account, but his knowledge was limited to Indus Valley. Hecatæus Miletus, 549 BC to 496 BC, was a Greek historian and geographer. His knowledge about India was limited to Indus Valley. Herodotus, 484 BC to 425 BC, is called the father of history. He, in his famous text Historics, gives us sufficient information about Persian, Iranian, and Greek invasion and Indo-Persian Iranian relations. Although he never visited India, but he tells us about the political condition of northwest India in his time. He knew of India as the easternmost and the most numerous of the people inhabiting the empire of the Persian Emperor Darius I. The land region of northern India, 20th satrapy, that is province of Darius Empire, paid him the huge annual tribute of 360 talents gold dust. Herodotus, sometime be led away from the truth, can be seen from his account of gold digging ants of the size of dogs. Cassius, 416 BC to 398 BC, was a Greek physician at the court of Persian Emperor Artasacus Mehmon. He had every opportunity of knowing the stories about India, but he has left an account Persica full of lies and exaggerations. It has survived only in the form of an abridgment. The names of Greek writers of Alexandrian time are Nearchus, Onesicritus, and Aristobulus. Nearchus was the classmate and admiral of naval fleet of Alexander the Great. He was sent by Alexander to discover the coastal area between Persian Gulf and Indus. His original book has been lost, but the later writers like Strabo, Arrian, etc. quoted passages from the original book. Onesicritus was the pilot of naval fleet of Alexander the Great. He took part in the expedition of Nearchus and wrote a book about India. He also wrote the biography of Alexander the Great. Aristobulus was a geographer. Alexander gave him some responsibilities. He described his own experiences in the book The History of War. Later Greek writer Arrian has utilized his account in the Anabasis of Alexander. The names of Greek writers of post-Alexandrian time are Megasthenes, Deimachus, Dionysios, Patroclus, Demosthenes, Aelian, Diodorus, Strabo, Plutarch, anonymous Greek writer of Periplus, Arrian, and Cosmas Indocoplistus. Megasthenes, 350 BC to 290 BC, was a Greek ambassador envoy sent by Seleucus Nicator, the Greek king of Persia, Iran, and Babylonia, to the court of Chandragupta Maurya, the founder of Maurya dynasty, where he resided up to 6 years, 302 BC to 296 BC. He wrote a book on India called Indica. The original book has been lost, but later writers like Diodorus, Strabo, Pliny, Roman, Arrian, Justin, etc., preserved the passages from the original book, and those passages have been collected to give an idea as to what Megasthenes think about India. Those have been translated into English by McCrindle. The information given by Megasthenes is quite detailed on certain points. Among other things, he described the geographical features of India, the fertility of the country, Patliputra, the capital of Chandragupta Maurya, the absence of slavery in India, the 7 castes of the Indians, the rare occurrence of theft in the country, Indian philosophers, and the part played by Dionysus and Heracles in India. Scholars have differed in their estimate of Megasthenes' veracity, truthfulness. In the present state of our knowledge, perhaps it is best to say that though Megasthenes related truthfully what he saw, there are also things that he reproduced from hearsay. Indica was the first book through which ancient Europe knew about India. Megasthenes was the first ambassador that mentioned in Indian history. Demachus was a Greek ambassador sent by Antiochus I, the ruler of Syria, to the court of Bindusara, the second Mauryan ruler. His original work has been lost, but later writers preserved passages from the original book. Dionysius was a Greek ambassador sent by Philadelphus Ptolemy II, the ruler of Egypt, to the court of Bindusara, the second Mauryan ruler. His original book is lost, only passages are survived in the writing of later Greek writers. Patroclus, 250 BC, was a Greek governor of the province that lies between Caspian Sea and Indus River under the rulership of Seleucus and Antiochus I. He described India and other countries in his book. Theomosthene was the naval admiral of Philadelphus Ptolemy II. Aelian, 100 BC, was a Greek historian. His book, A Collection of Miscellaneous History, contains the description of Northwest Province. Diodorus, died 36 BC, was a famous Greek historian. He is known for Bibliotheca Historica. He wrote about India on the basis of description found from Megasthenes. His book gives sufficient information regarding Alexander's invasion in India. Strabo, 64 BC to 19 BC, was a Greek historian and geographer. His text Geographia has an important place in history along with geography. He described geographical conditions along with social, religious, economic conditions of India. He mentions the marital relationship between Seleucus Nicator and Sandrakutos, identified as Chandragupta Maurya. He mentions women bodyguards of Sandrakutos, Chandragupta Maurya. Plutarch, 45 to 125 AD's book contains the description of the life of Alexander the Great and general introduction of India. He wrote, when Andronicus, identified as Chandragupta Maurya, was young, then he met with Alexander the Great. Anonymous Greek writer of the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, Periphas Maris Erythrae, that is, sailing around the Red Sea, 80 to 115 AD, made a voyage to the Indian coast about 80 AD, and he has left a record of its ports, harbours, and merchandise. The Periplus gives an idea of the maritime activities of ancient Indians. This text is known as a guide of sea trade. The unknown author of the Periplus claims that Hippalus, a mariner, was knowledgeable about the monsoon winds that shortened the trip from Red Sea to India and India to the Red Sea. It is an important foreign source for Sangam period of South India. It contains the detailed description of trade between Roman Empire and the regions of South India during 1st century AD. Arrian, 130 to 172 AD, was a famous Greek historian. He wrote 2 books, Indica and Anabasis of Alexander, History of Alexander's Campaigns. The account of Arrian has been regarded as the most reliable and authentic account among the accounts of Greek writers concerned with India. In this account, Chandragupta Maurya is mentioned as Androkutos. Cosmos Indicopilitus, 537 to 547 AD, was a Greek merchant who turned later a Buddhist monk. He sailed down Mediterranean Sea, Red Sea, Persian Gulf, Sri Lanka and India during 537 to 547 AD. Around 550 AD, he wrote the Christian Topography of the Universe, which contains valuable information about trade between India with Sri Lanka and other countries situated in western sea coast. Roman Latin writers. Pliny, 23 to 99 AD. He was a Roman historian. He was the contemporary of Kushana ruler Kanishka. He wrote an encyclopedic text, Naturalis Historica, that is, natural history. He gives the descriptions of India, which is based on information received from Greeks and other Western merchants. His text contains the detailed description about animals, plants, and minerals of India, along with the trade relation between Rome, Italy, and India. Curtius, 1st century AD. He was a Roman historian. He was the contemporary of Roman Emperor Claudius, 41 to 54 AD. His book contains sufficient information about Alexander the Great. Ptolemy, 2nd century AD. He was a Roman geographer and historian. His popular text, Geography, contains information about ancient geography and trade between India and Rome, Italy. Justin, 2nd century AD. He was a Roman historian. He wrote a text, namely Epitome, that is, summary of a written work. His text is based on Greek accounts. His text contains the description of Indian campaign of Alexander the Great, along with power seizing by Chandragupta Maurya. Justin wrote about the role of Chandragupta Maurya to uproot Greek power from northwest India. India, after the death of Alexander, had shaken, as it were, the yoke of servitude from its neck and put his governors to death. The author of this liberation was Sandrakutas. Sandrakutas is identified as Chandragupta Maurya. Chinese writers. Sima Qian, 145 BC to 85 BC, was the first Chinese writer who wrote about India in his text Historial Memoirs. Pan Kuo and Fanny, 378 to 445 AD. Annals of the earlier Hans, written by Pan Kuo, and Annals of the latter Hans, written by Fanny, contain valuable information about Kushan rulers Kujul Khadfises and Vem Khadfises. Fahane, 399 to 414 AD, came in India in 399 AD in the reign of Gupta ruler Chandragupta II Vikramaditya. He stayed in India for 15 to 16 years, 399 to 414. He came to India basically to cover an original copy of Vinaya Pitaka. After return to China, he wrote his travel account, namely Fo Kyo Ki, that is, Records of Buddhist Countries. This book is still available in original form. It throws sufficient light on history, civilization, and culture of Gupta period. It is written from Buddhist religious point of view, so there is lack of scientific temper. Sang Yun, 518 to 22 AD, came to India in the quest of Buddhist text and returned to China with 170 Mahayana text. Hyun Sung, 629 to 45 AD, came to India in 629 AD in the reign of Harshavardhana, the ruler of Vardhana dynasty. He stayed in India for 13 to 14 years, 629 to 45. He studied in Nalanda Mahavihara for 2 years. In 641 AD, he reached Kanchi in the reign of Narsingvarmana I. Mammal, the Pallava ruler of Kanchi, and stayed there for a long time. He wrote travel account Siyuki, that is, Buddhist records of the Western world. The account contains detailed information about history and culture of the country, especially the life of Harshavardhana and his activities, administration, religious, educational system of that time. It is truly a gazetteer. His account is really a storehouse of information that helps to connect the discrete sequences of historic events of India. He also writes about the Huna ruler Mihirkula, a contemporary of Gupta ruler Baladaditya, Buddhagupta, and some others who patronized the Nalanda Mahavihara. He is known as the king or prince of pilgrims. Hugh Lee wrote a biographical of his friend Huyen Sung, namely Life of Huyen Sung. It throws some light on Indian history. It Singh, 673 to 95 AD, came to India through sea route via Sumatra. He stayed in Nalanda Mahavihara for 10 years and studied Sanskrit text and Buddhist text. He wrote a travel account, a record of the Buddhist religion as practiced in India and Malay Archipelago. This text does not give much information about political history of India, but it contains precious information about Sanskrit literature and history of Buddhist religion. Itsing's autobiographies of famous Buddhist monks contains detailed information about social, economic and cultural life of India of that time. Itsing refers to Sri Gupta, who is generally believed to have been the first ruler of the Gupta dynasty. Hyocho, 727 AD, refers to the doings of Muktapida of Kashmir and Yashovarmana of Kanuj. Matwalin, 13th century AD, gives the information about Eastern campaign of Harshavardhana, the Vardhana ruler. Mohan, 15th century AD, came to India in 1406 AD. He visited Bengal. He was very impressed to see such an enriched region of India. He praised the manufactured things of Bengal. Tibetan writers. Taranath, 12th century AD, was a popular Tibetan historian. He wrote Kangyur and Tangyur. These texts give us information about ancient period of India. Dharmaswami, 13th century AD, came to India and studied in Nalanda Mahavihara for 3 years, 1234 to 36 AD. Arab writers. Sulaiman, 1851 AD, was an Arab merchant. He is first Arab traveler whose travel account is available. He sailed all coastal areas of India. He came to India in 851 AD during the reign of the Pratihar king Mihir Bhoja I, 836 to 85 AD. He stayed at the court of Amoghavarsha, 815 to 77 AD, the Rakshtrakuta ruler, and very impressed with his might and prosperity. He wrote book namely Silsila ut Thawarik. He described the conditions of earlier half of 9th century. He gives an interesting description about Pala, Pratihara, Rakshtrakuta kings. He called Pala empire Ruhama, that is Dharma or Dharma Pala. He called Gujjar Pratihara Jurs. He wrote the Jurs had the finest horses. He called the king of Deccan Balhara, identified as Vallabharaja. He called Hind Mahasagar, Indian Ocean, Darya-i Hargand. Ibn Khudadabi, 864 AD, was an Arab geographer. He wrote a book namely Kitab al-Masalik wa Mamalik, that is, the Book of Roads and Kingdoms. In this book, he gives important information about intercommunication system of 9th century. He was the first person among Arab geographers who speaks about the 7 castes of Hindus. Al-Bhiladuri, died 892 AD, wrote Futul ul-Buldan. It describes Sindh conquest by Arabs. Muhammad bin Qasim. Al-Masudi, died 956 AD, was an Arab traveler. He visited India in 915 AD in the reign of Gurjar Pratihara king Malipala I. He called Gurjar dynasty Al-Gujjar and the rulers Barua. He wrote Maruj ul Jahab. In his text, he described horses and camels of Mahipala I, the Pratihara king. He described Pan, betel leaf, in detail. He gives a fairly good account of Arab principalities of Multan and Mansura. Ibn Hakal, 943 to 79 AD, was a merchant of Baghdad. He came from Baghdad to India via different regions of Europe and Africa. He visited the state of Rashtrakutas. He wrote Ashkal al-Wilad. He made a cartographic map of Sindh. He was the first person among Arab geographers who attempted to define the length and breadth of India. This was the first attempt by any foreigner to define the boundaries of India. Al-Biruni, 973 to 1048 AD. His full name was Abu Rehan Muhammad ibn Ahmad al-Biruni, but he was popularly known as al-Biruni, meaning Ustad, that is teacher, master. He was born in Khwarizm of Uzbekistan. He was captivated by Mahmud Ghaznavi, the Sultan of Ghazni, during Khiva battle 1017 AD. Mahmud Ghaznavi brought him Ghazni and very impressed by his multi-talent. So, Mahmud Ghaznavi appointed him Nazumi, court astrologer. In 1019 AD, Al-Biruni came to India with their patron Mahmud Ghaznavi and stayed in Punjab for many years. He learned Sanskrit language and studied many books concerned with philosophy and other subjects. He has given the title Vidyasagar, that is, the ocean of knowledge by Hindus. After return to Ghazani, he compiled a book in Arabic language, Taqiyuq-e-Hind, Enquiry into India or Reality of India, in 1029 to 30 AD. This book is also called Tariq-e-Hind, History of India, or Kitab-ul-Hind, the Book of India. This book contains detailed information about Indian society and culture and other fields of knowledge like an encyclopedia. It is believed that this is the best foreign account of India. Such extensive and authentic study of Indian society and culture had not done before. Therefore, Al-Biruni is called first real Indologist. He was given the title the real founder of Indology. Note, Megasthenes was believed as the beginner of Indology. There are two shortcomings of this book. Firstly, Al-Biruni says practically nothing about the political condition of India in his own times, and secondly, he wrote from what he read and not from what he saw. His information is not based on his personal knowledge but on what he read in books. This book has been translated into English, namely Al-Biruni's India by Edward C. Sacho. In the words of Jarath, this book is a magic island of quite impartial research in the midst of a world of clashing swords, burning towns and plundered temples. Ibn Battuta, 1304 to 69 AD. The full name of Ibn Battuta was Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Abdullah Lawaluttangi ibn Battuta. He was born in 1304 AD at Tangiers in Morocco of Africa. He was a Moroccan African traveler. In 1333 AD, he came to India in the reign of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, the Sultan of Delhi Sultanate. Muhammad bin Tughlaq welcomed him and appointed Qazi, judge of Delhi. Ibn Battuta held this post up to 1342 AD when he was sent to China as an ambassador of Delhi Sultanate, but unfortunately he did not reach China due to shipwreck. He described Indian travel in which he gives valuable information about life and period of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. He described the reasons and the circumstances of capital transfer from Delhi to Devagiri, Dalutabad. In 1345 AD, he stayed in the court of Ghiyazuddin Muhammad Damghan Shah, the Sultan of Madurai. In 1353 AD, he returned back to his native place, Tangiers in Morocco. In 1355 AD, he wrote book in Arabic language, Rila, that is travel. He died in 1369 AD. Shihab al-Dinumari, 1348 AD, was a resident of Damascus, Syria. He had never came to India, but on the basis of information received by the Indian written person, he wrote a book, Masalika Absari Mamalika Azhar, in 1348 AD. It throws light on the socio-economic conditions. Abdur Razak, 1413 to 82 AD, was born in Herat, Afghanistan in 1413 AD. He was a Qazi at the court of Shahrukh, the son of Timur-Lang and Sultan of Samarkand, Persia. He was sent by Shahrukh as an ambassador to the Zamorin of Calicut in 1442 AD. In April 1443 AD, he visited Vijayanagara during the reign of Devaraya II. He stayed in the capital city, Vijayanagara, for 6 months. He was overawed with the size and grandeur of the city of Vijayanagara. He says, "The city is such that eye has not seen nor ear heard of any place resembling it upon the whole earth." He gives valuable information on the topography, administration and social life of Vijayanagara. Besides this, his text Malta as-Sadan wa Mazamul Mahrain, that is, the rising of two pious stars and conjecture of two seas, describes the maritime trade through Hind Mahasagar, Indian Ocean, during 14th to 15th centuries.